Pete Wilson pulled his thin jacket tighter as the cold rain soaked through to his skin. The little spot under the bridge wasn't much, but at least it kept the worst of the weather away. 8 months on the streets had taught him where to find shelter when the sky turned angry. "Happy birthday to me," Pete whispered, his breath making little clouds in the chilly morning air. 42 years old today, and nobody to celebrate with. Not that birthdays meant much anymore when you're trying to survive each day. Special occasions don't seem so special. Pete reached into his plastic bag and pulled out half a sandwich he'd saved from the church handout yesterday. His stomach growled, begging for more, but he broke the sandwich in two anyway. Old habits die hard. "Morning, Ray," Pete called to the skinny man limping toward him. Ray had a bad foot that never healed right. "Got something for you." Ray's face lit up at the sight of food. "Pete, you're a good man. Don't need to share your breakfast." "It's just a sandwich," Pete said with a shrug. "Besides, my mama always said sharing makes the food taste better." The two men ate in silence, watching the rain make puddles on the cracked pavement. When they finished, Ray pulled out a wrinkled newspaper from inside his coat. "Found this dry too. Thought maybe you'd like the politics section." Pete smiled. "Thanks, friend." Before he became homeless, Pete loved reading about politics. He'd been quite involved once upon a time. Now reading the news was like visiting an old neighborhood, familiar and comforting. After Ray left to check the dumpsters behind the grocery store, Pete gathered his few belongings. He needed to get to the recycling center early if he wanted to turn in his cans before the line got too long. $5 wouldn't seem like much to most people, but to Pete, it meant a hot meal. The rain slowed to a drizzle as Pete made his way through the quiet street. Most people were still asleep in their warm beds. Pete tried not to think about that, about beds with clean sheets and roofs that didn't leak. Thinking about what you didn't have only made things harder. Instead, he focused on his plan for the day, first the recycling center, then maybe the library to get warm and dry. The librarian, Miss Chen, was kind and never rushed him out like some places did. Sometimes she even saved the old magazines for him. As Pete crossed through Jefferson Park, he noticed how the spring rain had turned the grass extra green. Little things like that still made him smile. The park was empty this early, with puddles dotting the walking paths and dripping from the playground equipment. That's when Pete saw it, something dark and square lying in a puddle near a bench. At first, he thought it might be a small book, but as he got closer, he realized it was a wallet, a very expensive-looking wallet. Pete looked around. No one was there. He picked up the wallet carefully, wiping away the rainwater with his sleeve. The leather felt soft and smooth, not like the cheap wallets sold at discount stores. "Hello?" Pete called out. "Anybody lose something?" Only the chirping birds answered him. Pete hesitated. He should probably turn it in somewhere. But who would believe a homeless man found a wallet and didn't steal from it? Most people crossed the street when they saw him coming. Curiosity won out. Pete opened the wallet to look for ID, hoping to find the owner's name. His eyes widened when he saw the driver's license photo. "No way," he whispered. Pete blinked hard, making sure his eyes weren't playing tricks on him. But the face on the license didn't change. The wallet belonged to Barack Obama. The Barack Obama. Pete had followed his career for years, even at the shelter. When they got to watch TV, everyone respected the former president. He was a legend. With shaking hands, Pete looked through the rest of the wallet, credit cards, business cards, and cash. More cash than Pete had seen in a long time, at least $2,000. Pete's mind raced. $2,000 could change everything for him, a place to stay for a while, new clothes for job interviews, real food, medicines for his cough that wouldn't go away. For a moment, Pete allowed himself to imagine what that would be like, to sleep in a real bed again, to shower whenever he wanted, to not be hungry. The rain started falling harder, making little splashes in the puddles around his worn-out shoes. Pete closed the wallet and slipped it into his inner jacket pocket, the one with the zipper that still worked. Some decisions needed time, and this was the biggest decision Pete Wilson had faced in a long, long time. Pete found a dry bench under a big oak tree and sat down. His hands trembled as he took out the wallet again. "This ain't just any wallet," Pete whispered to himself. "This belongs to Barack Obama." Pete opened it carefully, as if it might break. The driver's license showed that familiar face, the man Pete had watched deliver speeches on TV screens at the shelter. The same man whose work had given Pete something to believe in during the darkest days of his life. The cash was neatly arranged, all $100 bills. $2,000. Pete ran his thumb across the money, feeling the crisp paper. With this much cash, He could get a motel room for a couple weeks, buy new clothes, eat real meals instead of digging through dumpsters, maybe even see a doctor about the pain in his chest that kept getting worse. Nobody would know. A small voice in his head whispered, "He's rich, he wouldn't even miss this money." Pete's stomach growled loudly, reminding him that half a sandwich wasn't much of a breakfast. When was the last time he'd eaten a full meal? 3 days ago? 4? He kept looking through the wallet. There were platinum credit cards, business cards with important names, and a few family photos. One showed Obama with his arms around 2 young girls, all of them laughing. Another was of an older woman with the same smile, probably his mother. Pete slipped the photos out and looked at them more closely. Happy faces, a family that loved each other. It reminded Pete of when he had a family too, before they all drifted apart. What would Mom say if she could see me now? Pete wondered aloud. He already knew the answer. Sheila Wilson had raised her son with one rule above all others: do what's right even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Pete remembered being 10 years old, finding a $20 bill on the sidewalk outside the grocery store. He'd been so excited, already planning what candy he'd buy, but his mother had made him turn it in to the store manager. "But Mom, finders keepers," he'd protested. "Peter James Wilson," she'd said firmly, "how would you feel if you lost your birthday money and nobody returned it? Doing the right thing isn't about what other people deserve, it's about who you choose to be." The memory was so clear it made Pete's chest hurt. His mom had been gone for 12 years now, but he could still hear her voice plain as day. Pete looked at the sky. The rain had stopped, and patches of blue were appearing between the clouds. People were starting to enter the park: joggers, dog walkers, and parents with strollers. Normal people with normal lives. I could be normal again, Pete thought, his fingers tightening around the wallet. But another thought kept pushing through. What kind of normal would that be? Starting over with stolen money? Pete sighed deeply. He knew what he had to do, what his mother would expect him to do, what he would expect from himself if he were still the man he used to be. He carefully put everything back in the wallet exactly as he'd found it. Then he pulled out one of the business cards. It showed the logo of a fancy hotel downtown, the Grand Palmer. Under the logo was a handwritten note: "Meeting in lobby, 7 p.m. That's where I'll find him," Pete decided. It would be a long walk across town, at least 5 miles. His shoes had holes in them, and his bad knee would be screaming by the time he got there. The hotel staff would probably call security the moment they saw him approaching the entrance. They might not even believe his story. None of that changed what was right. Pete tucked the wallet safely back into his inner pocket and zipped it closed. Then he stood up, wincing at the pain in his knee, and began walking toward downtown. His empty stomach protested with every step, reminding him of what he was giving up: $2,000, food, shelter, medicine. "Shut up, stomach," Pete muttered. "We're doing this." As he walked, Pete rehearsed what he would say when he met Barack Obama. Should he just hand over the wallet and leave? Should he explain how he found it? Would the former president even talk to someone like him? Doesn't matter, Pete decided. I'm not doing this for a reward or a thank you. I'm doing it because it's right. The journey took most of the day. Pete stopped at a public water fountain to get a drink, trying to quiet his hungry stomach. He thought about stopping at the shelter for lunch, but if he did, he might not make it to the hotel before evening. Better to keep going. As Pete walked through fancier and fancier neighborhoods, people gave him strange looks. Some crossed the street to avoid him. He was used to it by now, being invisible or unwanted. But today, with Barack Obama's wallet in his pocket, Pete walked with his head held high. I might be homeless, he thought, but I still know right from wrong. Still got my dignity. And right now, that felt worth more than $2,000. As the neighborhoods got fancier, the buildings grew taller. Pete felt smaller and smaller. When was the last time he'd been downtown? 6 months ago? Back then, he'd been looking for work, going from place to place until security guards started watching him too closely. One foot in front of the other, Pete told himself as he passed a restaurant where people sat outside eating lunch. The smell of burgers made his empty stomach twist painfully. He picked up his pace. By early afternoon, the temperature had risen, and Pete's damp clothes stuck to his skin. He stopped at a public park to rest his aching knee and refill his plastic water bottle at a drinking fountain. An older woman sitting on a nearby bench clutched her purse tighter when she saw him. Pete pretended not to notice. He was used to it by now, the way people looked through him or, worse, looked at him with fear or disgust. Sometimes Pete felt like he wasn't even human anymore in their eyes. Just another couple miles, he told himself, checking that the wallet was still secure in his inner pocket. As Pete approached the downtown area, the sidewalks became more crowded. Men and women in business suits rushed past, talking on phones or to each other. No one made eye contact with the limping homeless man. A police officer watched Pete from across the street. Pete kept his head down and continued walking. He hadn't done anything wrong, but that didn't always matter when you looked like he did. His knee was throbbing badly now. Pete found a concrete planter to sit on for a moment. He stretched his leg, wincing at the sharp pain, an old basketball injury that never healed right. One of the many ways life had taken an unexpected turn. Pete pulled out the business card again and checked the address of the Grand Palmer Hotel. Only 15 more blocks to go. He could make it before dark if he kept a steady pace. As he neared the hotel district, the buildings seemed to reach all the way to the clouds. Pete felt dizzy looking up at them. Everything was shiny, the windows, the cars, even the sidewalks seemed cleaner. People's shoes clicked importantly on the pavement. Pete looked down at his own worn sneakers, held together with duct tape on one side. The difference between his world and theirs couldn't have been more obvious. 3 more blocks to go. Pete's pace had slowed to a shuffle. A group of teenagers passed him, one of them holding his nose dramatically. The others laughed. Pete kept his eyes on the sidewalk. Finally, he saw it, the Grand Palmer Hotel. The building stretched at least 30 stories high, with a fancy entrance where men in red uniforms opened car doors for guests. A doorman stood at attention, wearing white gloves and a serious expression. Pete stopped across the street, suddenly unsure. How was he supposed to just walk in there? Would they even let him through the door? Maybe I should just leave it with the doorman, Pete thought. But what if the doorman didn't believe him? What if they thought he stole it? Or what if the wallet didn't make it back to Barack Obama? Pete took a deep breath and crossed the street. His heart pounded in his chest as he approached the gleaming entrance with its gold revolving doors. The doorman's eyes narrowed as Pete got closer. He stepped forward, blocking the entrance. "Can I help you?" he asked in a tone that made it clear Pete wasn't welcome. "I need to see Barack Obama," Pete said, his voice scratchy from thirst. "I found his wallet." The doorman's expression didn't change. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to move along." "But I really did find his wallet," Pete insisted, reaching toward his jacket pocket. "Sir," the doorman's voice hardened, "do not reach into your pockets. Please leave the premises immediately." Pete saw 2 security guards watching from inside the lobby. One of them spoke into a radio clipped to his shoulder. "Please," Pete tried again. "I walked all the way across town. The wallet has $2,000 in it. I just want to return it." The doorman shook his head. "I've heard every story in the book. Now please move along before we have to call the police." Pete's shoulders slumped. All this way for nothing. The security guards were moving toward the door now. Just then, a sleek black car pulled up to the entrance. The driver got out and opened the back door. Pete's heart nearly stopped when he saw who stepped out: Barack Obama in person, taller than Pete had imagined. Without thinking, Pete called out, "Mr. President, Mr. President, I found your wallet." Obama turned toward the sound of Pete's voice. The security guards were already moving to block Pete, but something made Obama raise his hand to stop them. "Hold on a minute," Obama said, his calm voice carrying across the space between them. "What did you say?" Pete's heart hammered in his chest. He couldn't believe Barack Obama was actually looking at him, talking to him. "Your wallet, sir," Pete said, his voice shaking a little. "I found it in Jefferson Park this morning." Obama's expression changed from curiosity to surprise. He patted his jacket pocket, then checked his other pockets. The realization crossed his face: he hadn't even noticed his wallet was missing. "Let him through," Obama told the security guards, who stepped aside reluctantly. Pete limped forward, painfully aware of his dirty clothes and unshaven face. He unzipped his inner pocket with trembling fingers and carefully pulled out the leather wallet. "I didn't take anything from it," Pete said quickly. "Everything's still there: the money, the cards, the pictures." Obama took the wallet, studying Pete's face. "You walked all the way here to return this to me?" Pete nodded. "The address was on your business card." Obama opened the wallet and looked inside. The cash was untouched, all $100 bills. His credit cards were in place. Even the family photos were exactly as he'd left them. "What's your name?" Obama asked. "Pete Wilson." "Well, Pete Wilson, most people would have kept this money." Pete looked down at his worn-out shoes. "I thought about it. He admitted, I really did. What stopped you? Pete was quiet for a moment. My mom always said doing the right thing isn't about what other people deserve, it's about who you choose to be. He shrugged. I guess I'm still trying to be the man she raised. Obama studied Pete more carefully, taking in his ragged appearance, the plastic bag containing all his possessions, the exhaustion in his eyes. When's the last time you ate, Pete? Pete tried to remember. Had half a sandwich yesterday morning. Obama shook his head, seeming to make a decision. He turned to one of the men who had arrived with him. Tony, we're going to be a little late to that meeting. The man checked his watch. But sir, the investors. They can wait, Obama said firmly. He turned back to Pete. I'd like to buy you dinner, if that's okay. Pete blinked in surprise. Dinner? With you? Obama nodded. Least I can do for the man who returned my wallet. The doorman and security guards exchanged confused looks as Barack Obama led a homeless man through the grand lobby of the Grand Palmer Hotel. Pete tried not to stare at the crystal chandeliers, marble floors, and fancy furniture. It was like walking into another world. People turned to look at Obama, then at Pete walking beside him. Pete heard their whispers, saw their shocked expressions. He wanted to disappear, but Obama acted like nothing was unusual, guiding Pete toward the hotel restaurant. Sir, the restaurant host said nervously, eyeing Pete's dirty clothes. Perhaps the private dining room would be more appropriate? That would be perfect. Obama agreed, understanding the situation. And could you send someone to the gift shop for some clean clothes? Size, he looked at Pete questioningly. Large, Pete said quietly, feeling his face grow hot with embarrassment. And, size 11 shoes. As they waited for the clothes, Obama ordered food, lots of it. Pete's mouth watered at the smell of fresh bread the waiter brought to the table. Go ahead, Obama encouraged. You must be starving. Pete tried to eat slowly, to remember his manners, but he was so hungry. The bread was the best thing he'd tasted in months. When the main courses arrived, steak, potatoes, vegetables, Pete almost cried. He couldn't remember the last time he'd seen so much food on one plate. Thank you, Pete said between bites. I don't even have words. Obama smiled. My pleasure. Now tell me about yourself. Pete Wilson, what's your story? Pete set down his fork, suddenly self-conscious. Not much to tell. Used to work at the auto factory over in West Side. Got laid off when they closed it down. Couldn't find steady work after that. Unemployment ran out. Then the rent was due. And he gestured at himself. The explanation clear. One thing had led to another. And here he was. You have family? Obama asked. Pete shook his head. Mom passed 12 years ago. Dad left when I was little. Had a sister in Ohio. But we lost touch. People get busy with their own lives, you know? Obama nodded, his expression thoughtful. And before the factory, what did you do? This and that, Pete said vaguely. Some parts of his past were still too painful to talk about. Worked on cars mostly. I was good with engines. After they finished eating, an employee brought in clothes from the hotel gift shop, clean jeans, a button-up shirt, a light jacket, new socks, and sneakers. Obama showed Pete to a bathroom where he could change. Pete stared at himself in the mirror. First time he'd seen his reflection clearly in weeks. His beard was grayer than he remembered. His eyes looked older, but the clean clothes made him look almost normal again. Almost like the Pete Wilson he used to be. When Pete returned to the dining room, Obama was on the phone. He ended the call when he saw Pete. Feel better? Obama asked. Pete nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. I don't know how to thank you. Obama waved away his thanks. You returned $2,000 when you had every reason to keep it. That says a lot about your character. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, a different one this time. He wrote something on the back before handing it to Pete. Meet me here tomorrow at 10 a.m. Obama said. I want to continue our conversation, but I've got to get to my meeting now. Pete stared at the card. Why? I mean, you already bought me dinner. You don't owe me anything else. Obama stood up, straightening his tie. Sometimes people just need a chance. Pete, maybe tomorrow we can talk about what kind of chance would help you most. As Obama walked Pete back through the lobby, people stared again, but this time Pete stood a little straighter in his clean clothes. At the door, Obama shook Pete's hand. Don't forget, Obama said, tomorrow, 10 a.m. Pete watched as Obama got into his waiting car. He couldn't believe what had just happened. A day that started under a bridge was ending with dinner with Barack Obama and plans to meet again tomorrow. For the first time in months, Pete felt something he'd almost forgotten: hope. That meeting would lead to a job at a local community organization where Pete's natural empathy and life experience would prove invaluable in helping others. Within a year, Pete would develop a successful program to help homeless individuals rebuild their lives, a program that would eventually be named Wilson's Way and funded by the Obama Foundation. But on that first night, as Pete checked into a small motel room with the money Obama had insisted he take, he simply felt grateful, not just for the food and clean clothes, but for the chance to be seen as a person of value again, someone whose choices mattered. The wallet that Pete had found contained much more than $2,000. It contained the key to remembering who he truly was, a man who, even at his lowest point, could still choose to do what was right.